When it comes to diets, we often think that the individuals are responsible for eating healthy, for eating sustainable. But unfortunately, the answer isn't that simple.
To start, could you tell me a bit more about yourself, your background, and what drew you to Plan Eat, for instance?
I'm Olivia Riemer. I work at the sustainability think tank TMG. We are based in Berlin, Germany, and our focus is supporting international sustainability transitions. My team is focused on food systems, bioeconomy, and true cost accounting. The team and I believe that we need to develop sustainable economic systems in order to achieve the sustainability goals set by the United Nations and its member states. So what this means is that we think that we need to align the economic incentives for businesses and policymakers in order to set an economic foundation that supports sustainable business making and sustainable decision making. What we can observe at the moment is that a lot of the costs generated to society through climate change, biodiversity loss, low wages, bad health is socialized. These costs are paid by society, whereas private benefits are privatized, so belong to the businesses. And we think that is fundamentally flawed and stops us to really, in the long term, transition to a sustainable future. And that's what my team and I want to tackle. That's why we focused on true cost accounting in order to account for these hidden costs and benefits. I myself have an economic background. I studied agriculture science and then specialized in food and agriculture economics. So this might not come as a surprise, but I really think that the economics are flawed and we need to fix that.
Can you tell us a bit more about the link between true cost accounting and Plan Eat? Why did you introduce this concept in this project for healthy, sustainable dietary behavior?
When it comes to diets, we often think that the individuals are responsible for eating healthy, for eating sustainable. But unfortunately, the answer isn't that simple. Individual behavior is shaped very much by the food environments that we're in. That could be the supermarket, that can be the school where we're having lunch, that could be our workplace and the surrounding food places that we find. But it's also the political framework that shapes our diets. Is what stores are allowed in our neighborhood, what are the dietary guidelines set by governments. And I think it's important to realize that the responsibility is not only with the individual, but that it's a systemic system that shapes food behavior. And true cost accounting contributes to that because true cost accounting accounts for the economic incentives set to businesses and policymakers in order to shape this food environment. What I mean by that is we have the food systems generate a lot of hidden costs. The Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations has measured these costs for a lot of countries around the world. And in Europe, we can observe that the hidden costs are larger than the added value generated by the European food systems. So we can see that that economic equation is off. What this means for individual diets is that the prices in the supermarket don't tell the truth. So by simply looking at a price of a food, you cannot tell whether this is good for the planet, whether this is good for your health. But price is one of the key incentives or deciding factors why we pick a specific food or not. So we would like to change that, not necessarily directly the prices in the supermarket, but we want to change the economic accounting system of how businesses account for their costs in the first place, that they're incentivized to reduce emissions when producing food, for example. And what we have done in the Plan Eat project is to show the hidden costs of diets to make policymakers aware of this issue and to raise awareness. We have, for example, assessed the true cost of dietary patterns in Ireland, France, and Germany. And what the findings have shown that around 4 to 6 euros of savings could be done if these countries would recommend a planetary health diet for their nations.
€6
Per person per day.
person per day. And do you have some examples of hidden costs more specifically?
So hidden costs are hidden, but it doesn't mean they're not real costs. They are real costs. So what I mean by this is that we're already paying for these hidden costs, or at least future generations will. For example, climate emission will stay with us for a very long time. They mean that it will be more difficult for us to grow food in specific areas of the world. It means more extreme weather events, which means less secure yields. So these are all costs that will come to us in the future and future generations will have to pay for. But there are also costs we are already paying right now. For example, health insurance systems, social security systems that we all pay. But if our community continues to eat unhealthy, they will have to visit the doctors more often. These are costs that we all have to carry and pay for, and these are costs that we could avoid with more healthy and sustainable diets and lifestyles. Another example of a hidden cost are nitrogen leakages. When we open the tap to drink a glass of tap water, we're not only paying for that water, but we're also paying for the nitrogen leakage due to, for example, fertilizer subsidies around the world that lead to the overuse of pesticides, which means that they're running into the groundwater, which means more cleaning processes for the water and then higher costs. So we can avoid these cost cycles, shifting costs from one end to the other, thereby hiding it, by declaring it in the moment where it happens. So applying the polluters pay principle. And that is the core principle of true cost accounting, making these hidden costs visible in the right moment and allowing us to integrate them into our decision making.
Could you tell us a bit more about other results that you had throughout the project?
Plan Eat helped to bring true cost accounting forward. True cost accounting was at a very early stage when we started with Plan Eat 4 years ago. What Plan Eat has contributed is that we looked at the data gaps and the data available for true cost accounting for Europe. So for the very first time, we have a good picture and overview of the data accessible to us in order to analyze the true costs and benefits of food systems. But maybe even more importantly, we identified the data gap and provided strategies on how to bridge these gaps. When we analyzed this data, we collected this data available to us at the time and converted it into true cost accounting information. So for the very first time, we have an open access, free-to-use database on the true costs of foods in Europe. It allows anybody with some small Excel skills to see the true costs of different foods that we are consuming in Europe. This, for example, allows researchers that are not directly familiar with economic science to integrate this information, for example, when assessing the overall sustainability performance of diets in Europe. But it also allows normal people, such as businesses, to apply the costs. For example, canteens could use this information in order to assess the true cost of their meal plans and help them to transition to a more healthy and sustainable meal plan for their clients.
Did you already have some feedback from policymakers, for instance, on their opinion on true cost accounting? Are they in favor of this concept, or are they a bit against it, or would they be open to design new policy measures around it?
I think that food is a very sensitive political topic. That's why Plan Eat is also so important, and that's why our contributions matter. I think that policymakers are often afraid that true cost accounting will lead to increased food prices, which is often not a very popular policy strategy. So what we have seen is that the Netherlands try to use true cost accounting, and where there's a lot of openness in the government to apply true cost accounting, and I would even go as far as that they're one of the front runners. What we can also observe, for example, in Switzerland, is that they have assessed the true cost of the Swiss food systems, and they are planning to use this information in order to inform the new food and agriculture strategy of Switzerland. Another example is that the German government have asked us to develop a roadmap to apply true cost accounting to the German agri-food systems. They have asked us to show the steps that would be necessary in order to set up a true cost accounting assessment. There are also organizations out there who try to convince policymakers that, for example, adjusting present policy measures such as the value-added tax in order to adjust price levels for fruit and vegetables and meat, so products that are low in sustainability costs or environmental costs or high in sustainability costs. We know that there are strategies for consumption that allows us to, be within our economic means and the means of our planet. Transitioning to plant-based diets is definitely a strategy that would be both beneficial to our health, but also to the health of the planet, and also has less environmental impacts and therefore less true costs and means lower prices.
Do you have any word you would like to say for a conclusion, maybe a next step you have in mind for true cost accounting in food and diets? Or
I think for us the most important message is that people understand that true cost accounting doesn't necessarily mean rising prices. It means relatively changing them and making sure that the costs are built where they occur. And by adjusting this, we think that we can fix the flawed economic accounting and help us make better decisions for the future. Where I see where true cost accounting is going is that I can see that a lot of universities and research institutions are taking up this approach and help develop it further. Besides the research, I think we also need to develop more databases and software in order to make the assessments of true costs more accessible.
thank you very much, Olivia. And I'm wishing you all the best for true cost accounting.
Thank you so much for having me, Juliette. Have a good day.